So here we are, and this is Monday, I think, isn't it, Pat?
Yes,
It is definitely Monday.
it's
Not
Monday
quite up on
afternoon.
Friday there, but definitely Monday. Definitely Monday. The whole week we got through. Do you think we'll survive it?
Yes.
You do? Despite the cold.
Absolutely. Jude, apparently the beast from the east is making a reappearance this week. No, and I was out there 2 minutes ago
What, Boris
outside, and
Johnson?
I noticed
Boris Johnson?
Boris Johnson, the beast from the east. Yeah, oh no, he's French, isn't he? Well, or where he's Russian background as well. Anyway,
Oh, sorry.
apparently it's at the quote itself. There's snow some parts down about Athlone, and it looks like it's heading this way.
Yeah. Well, we sort of had an easy enough old winter. And in fact, somebody was saying that there should be more rain, otherwise we're going to wind up with a problem. I'm not complaining. I went out for a walk today, and the conditions were beautiful. Really late. It was brisk, slightly chilly, but great. Really good. Very good. Very good. Okay, let's get down to business here, Pat. You have posed a lot of interesting questions here, and one of them concerns the Honourable Heaton-Harris, who has said, as you say, with a straight face, that Boris Johnson is a man of integrity. We were talking about funny books there before we came on the air. I think that's pretty funny.
Yeah, and I'd like he was on Sky yesterday morning, and he said that Boris Johnson was a man of integrity, 100% and 100%. So, and I'm going, if he can say that with a straight face, we have got a major problem. So why should we believe anything that comes out of his mouth? Because even the guy whose name escapes me as usual, the senior, I think he's called Simon Case now, I think on it, who was the most senior civil servant. And when they were trying to introduce the COVID rules and regulations in Britain, he said one of the big problems is that a lot of people, because the lead role was that of Boris Johnson, that he was not a person of trust, and people just didn't believe him. That the authorities or the establishment or the government or whatever you want to call it would have a major issue. And this is the man. By the way, Jude, Boris Johnson is known to be. He's a charlatan. He was fired from 3 or 4 jobs for lying. He's had more affairs than most people can shake a stick at. Nobody's, and I mean nobody's quite sure how many children he has. He made a deal with the EU that he openly admits he intended breaking afterwards. The 350 million a week, he and Dominic Cummings come up with that for the health board or the National Health Service. So I could keep going. So anybody that comes on air, like Heaton-Harris did yesterday morning, says that he's a man of honor and his integrity and all this sort of stuff. Like, should you go to hey, come on? Are you taking us for the?
Is that not a wee bit just like sort of convention? Like I remember they got after Jeremy Corbyn because they introduced somebody from Hamas or something, and as he said, our friend so and so. You know, if you're introducing an after-dinner speaker, or if you're writing an obituary, you tend to say things about a person, and you pump them up a bit, and that's accepted, and people know that the real thing wasn't nearly so sweet as they're being made out to be.
No, I don't agree with that. You could have said like he was a fine prime minister and had many innovative ideas and had a great charming personality. But to tell us something that we know is factually untrue is actually, I think, an insult to our intelligence. And I think it says more about the person making those sort of comments. In other words, he's so far up Boris Johnson's backside, and he wants to be seen to stay in tune or in favour with that faction that he's not going,
You don't think, Pat, that it might be that, I mean, Heaton-Harris was part of this move that got this protocol on the Stormont break and all the rest of it. And he was very positive about it, wasn't he? And that surprised people. Yeah. So maybe he feels he's leaned that way, and now he's got to lean back a little bit towards the other side of Johnson to right things in case they think he's gone native or something.
Yeah, I know it's politics, but it's back to the sort. Like if somebody tells you, the black is white, and black's still black, you then you sort of say, well, see, the next time someone comes out with something, you're going to you're going to at least question it, because why should you believe a word that comes out of their mouth? And like John Hume, in fairness to him, I don't think ever told a lie and that sort of way. Hume got around things, but he never sort of went down that road. In fact, no, I'll give you a simple example. He never really condemned the IRA in a way that a lot of people thought he did. If there's a British soldier shot John didn't get into this whole. He said that is some mother's son, and that it's a terrible tragedy. And like he wasn't getting into this sort of. He just sort of explained as it was. Now,
Uh,
Heaton-Harris, this sort of come out that Boris Johnson is a man of integrity,
yeah,
hundred
well,
percent. Like
I
Jim,
accept. I accept
that's
that. I
insane.
mean, you're setting up a pretty high bar when you take John Hume, because in many ways, he
Yeah,
was a model of integrity, certainly compared to the likes of
yeah.
Johnson. But as I say,
But that's
everybody
why you
knows what he
that's
is.
why you
I don't
believe,
think that
and
he's.
that's why you didn't believe.
Sorry.
So, but I said that's why he believes people like Hume, because he knew he didn't always tell 100% the truth, but you knew he didn't tell lies.
Well, you mentioned another little thing at the end of that, Pat. You mentioned the fact that Boris is going to recommend. How can he recommend his father Stanley for a knighthood? He's not the prime minister, is he?
And each outgoing prime minister is entitled to submit an honours list, and apparently Boris. It's
But
by the way,
there's been
I wasn't.
two prime ministers since Boris.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean like each outgoing prime minister is each prime minister is entitled to submit an honours list, and apparently, and by the way, I thought I wasn't sure about that, but I just no, I had to go somewhere, but I just heard the opening lines of Talkback today, and apparently it was coming up for a discussion on their program though as well that Boris had nominated his father for a knighthood.
Well, again, I wouldn't have put much pass or many remarks on that. I mean, the whole honours thing, the empire, and if you were in a position to say, please address me as Sir Pat from now on. I mean, it's as sort of daft as. I remember back, I don't know if it was true or not, but we always told that Chinese girls, when they were infants, their feet were bound to keep them.
Yeah,
So when they're growing up, their feet were very dainty and small. I mean, we think that kind of thing is really weird. It's no more weird than the thing of you're a companion of the bath and you're a Sir Pat, as I say from Mr. McGuire.
Remember there was a guy called Sir Basil McFarland in Londonderry. He owned a lot. He owned a Londonderry and Lost Swilly really back in the day. He was a millionaire when millionaire really meant something. And anyway, the story goes that he was of sort of commonage heritage, if you know what I mean. And he paid 10,000 quid way back in about 1910 or something. I'm not certain of the date now, for 10,000 to the Tory party to get a knighthood. So he could be called Sir Basil McFarland. Now, Jude, £10,000 today is a lot of money. Can you imagine it back 100 and what many years ago? What it was 120 years ago or whatever it was, I'm not even quite sure. Like it would be probably somewhere in the region of 500,000 now. Imagine paying 500,000 to get peerage.
Is that how it works, Pat? Is that how it works? That they say, if I give enough money, you'll make me a knight.
Yeah, well, if you pay the Tory party, I'm sure you'll get a nomination in all the rest of it. I presume payment on delivery.
I was just wondering, because, it seems to me vague. What is it that Boris measures up when he's according a knighthood or a companion of the bath or whatever on his list? I mean, are there criteria for this? I mean, do you have to have
I don't think so.
Worked in politics?
Well, sure, they can do whatever the hell they want. Sure, look at Trump. He was as president. He was able to pardon guys who have been sentenced by the court to 20 and 30 years in jail. So there's certain perks in being the top dog in the Western democracies. I don't think, as far as I'm aware, Jude, there's any criteria. As long as you make the list, and I think as long as you're not convicted of any major offence, in Britain, you're entitled to.
Yeah, they do. I think they make out this idea that this person is very worthwhile to society.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And then they cover that by saying, "Well, here's our dinner lady. We give her an OB as well."
So they throw out the one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I just think that the awarding of it to Boris's dad is less sort of scandalizing than the very existence of the whole system. I really think it's rubbish. Absolute rubbish. It's a harsh thing because I know some people who have accepted OBEs and so on, but I think anybody who accepts one of those, they really should examine their conscience. It's
Yeah.
essentially
Well,
saying, I'm linked with the British Empire, and what's more, I'm better than you. Look at how good I am. Look at the stuff I've done. I think if you take that
that's a story.
attitude, what you've done, whatever good you've done, becomes worthless almost.
Yeah. Well, the story goes that Eddie McAteer, the farmer and the Nationalist Party leader,
Remember
in
well.
I think it's the late 60s, early 70s, some guy from the British, I've told you a story before, knocked on his door and said, Mr. McAteer, I'm here on behalf of the British government to ask, would you accept a gong on whatever it was on behalf of the British Empire? Eddie says, what empire? And closed the door. you know.
Very good, very good.
uh,
Well, it's sort of, I find it sort of sad, the number of people who will really opt for that. I mean, it's sad because they think it is of some significance. I mean, for God's sake, the only thing about it is, if you were made a lord, you could collect £300 a day. That's not bad. That's good money.
yeah.
So I can see the kind of logic of that. But all the rest of it, CBE and OBE and so on. Well, I mean, when would people even know that you had the damn thing? Would you be saying, speaking of OBEs, I've got one of those? Or would you, when you sign your name?
Dr. Consulate, hold on. Remember Tony O'Reilly, the rugby player, the press baron, and all the rest of it? Tony O'Reilly, after being knighted, told his staff to refer to him as Sir Anthony. And the other thing as well, remember as well, he was asked about, I presume, the knighthood and the fact that he owned the independent newspaper. He says, these things open doors for me in society. So in other words, you move in the right circles.
Well, I've heard people, decent, Englishmen, make that argument for the House of Lords. I don't think it works, actually, because this guy I'm thinking of was a strong Labour man. But he said, a place in the House of Lords for ex-Labour candidates or big union bosses or whatever was an important thing because it gave them a sort of stand on which they could enunciate their views. Don't buy it. Don't buy it. How could you say, I'm a Labour person, I believe in the equality, and by the way, call me Lord Jude.
Yeah, and as well as that, Jude, I think once you've gone down that road, you're bought into what you're condemning through the establishment.
Yeah. Oh, well, they deserve each other is all I can say. I still say that Heaton-Harris was only sort of saying that to be nice and maybe to right the balance a wee bit, but, it's up for discussion. We've discussed it. We'll move on to the next one. This one is very, very strange one. I didn't hear this at all now. And it involved Matthew O'Toole, who was on a Stephen Nolan show, and they were discussing...
yeah.
They were discussing this man, David Campbell, was it? No, or was he on, was he?
Yeah, I presume O'Toole was on about the same time on Friday morning as me and you were doing our weekly podcast.
Okay.
Apparently what happened on Friday morning is, and this is, I've only read about it, they were discussing O'Toole, who's the SDLP representative for South Belfast.
Very articulate guy.
And there was, very articulate. He's a former journalist and he worked in 10 Downing Street. Anyway, they were discussing David Campbell, the chairperson of the Loyalist Communities Council. And they got into some sort of conflict on the situation. And anyway, O'Toole was pulled off air and mid-sentence, as it were. And anyway, the bottom line of it all was, I think what O'Toole was saying, David Campbell was coming on, and he actually used the term, sounding well-educated and wearing expensive suits, but speaking on behalf of LCC, and he says, putting forward views obviously O'Toole didn't like. And you see, Jude, the problem is while the Loyalist Communities Council is totally legal, and what Campbell was saying, he's quite entitled to be on air, but he's speaking on behalf of organisations that are not legal. And here, there's a bit of causes.
Hold it for a second. Just clarify that for me. You're saying the LCC represents...
it's a totally legal organisation.
It's a legal organisation, but it represents illegal organisations.
It's at the organisation itself. David Campbell is not doing anything illegal. That's fact. He's speaking, but what he's doing is, as they consult with the UVF and the UDA and so on, and they sort of represent them in the sort of the public arena. Now, But the problem is, if you were Jude Conlon's or Pat McGarry was the spokesperson for the new IRA or the real IRA, and we went on and say for example, we're aware that our boys will be threatening police and prison officers, etc., etc., etc. I don't think it would be acceptable to the union's population. So a lot of people in the nationalist population are saying, why is this man who is unelected and is speaking for illegal organisations, while, by the way, totally legal himself, why is the BBC allowing this? And I think that was the point O'Toole was making. I presume Nolan was getting nervous about the fact that they were straying into territory. Was O'Toole claiming or suggesting that in some way Campbell was doing something illegal or so? I presume that might be it. But the whole issue, Jude, is not about really Campbell. It's about the BBC's editorial policy, because if it's okay for one, it should be okay for the other.
I have a lot of sympathy with Matthew O'Toole. Anybody who gets cut off in mid-sentence by the BBC, I feel their pain.
You speaking personally,
but I'm still a wee bit confused by this. Like, if I was to think back 30 years ago, Sinn Féin were a legal political party. Now, they were were they black? They weren't blacklisted. They were allowed to appear, but they had their voiceover on them. But their words were allowed to be heard. Were they speaking? Were they reporting stuff about the IRA, or were they not?
You remember? Well, there was Section 31 in the South meant their words could be heard, but it had to be spoken by an actor, which was it was farce. But anyway, no, they weren't speaking on behalf of the IRA. They were speaking on behalf of Sinn Féin, the political organisation.
So but this sounds a bit different. Like LCC sounds different from that. It sounds like it is some sort of microphone for the UDA and the UVF. Am I right, or have I got that wrong?
Here's the problem. David Campbell is invited on to the BBC to give his views on these people. And like has the Loyalist Community Council, I think, was set up by Jonathan Powell to sort of the Tony Blair guy, to sort of, because he felt that Loyalist working class were getting bypassed,
well, that's in a way true. That is true. Yeah.
So it's this sort of riding two horses. I think Matthew O'Toole used the term "good cop, bad cop." What he meant was he's a good cop when he's speaking for the Loyalist Community Council, and then when he's reflecting the views of the Loyalist illegal organisations, he's coming across as a bad cop. So is that Mr. Campbell's problem? Is it Mr. O'Toole's problem, or is it the BBC sort of? I think I would like to know how the BBC can reconcile that, by the way, because I don't see how you or I or anyone else would be invited on in such circumstances.
I don't think we've been invited on at all. Incidentally, I forgot to say, I got an invitation to, and I forgot all about it. It was yesterday or the day before. I was invited to do an interview on GB News. Arlene Foster. Well, I don't know if it's Arlene Foster now, but it was from somebody that said, would I be available for an interview in the afternoon? And I remember replying, and I said, depending on what the topic is. And then I forgot about it after that, which shows how high on my priority list it was. But, let's keep this in mind, Pat, just as a counterbalance again. Campbell wouldn't be the first to say that we have concerns about Loyalist backlash, Loyalist violence. I mean, I would have that concern.
Exactly, that's a fair point.
So, maybe to that extent, it's fair enough for him to say, I'm all right, I'm the chairperson of the LCC or whatever, but I'm close to the ground and I know what's going on, and I'm just telling you you could provoke.
I think we have to get away from. Mr. Campbell. I think the problem is the BBC. Why is Jimmy Bryson on regularly on Nolan? Why is he involved in Nolan's show on the television? Why is Campbell being brought on all these? These are all, and I think there are others. And Jim Allister, a party of one, on all the time. They're, is it all about ratings? These guys are given an unbelievable platform, and then I think they lead people by the nose. They're so extreme that they sort of pander to or there's going to be a threat of violence. And the next thing is all getting played up. Like Jamie Bryson got 167 votes when he stood for election, yet he now, and this is not an exaggeration, seems to be setting the agenda for the DUP.
Yeah. It's a quite difficult one. You don't think that the way they're talking, this references to violence lurking in the shadows with loyalists. Is that not counterproductive? Because what you're faced with at present is one mass of people who don't want to have anything to do with United Ireland, one mass of people that would be quite interested in a border poll, and a lot of people in the middle who are, not quite sure which way they want to go, to stay with the Union or to go with a United Ireland. Would this kind of thing not put a lot of people off siding with unionism or the maintaining the link with Britain? Whenever you have this kind of thing where they're saying, "Oh, we'll threaten you," and they're somehow these views are allowed to appear on or be heard on the BBC, would that not push people into the United Ireland camp rather than scare them into going in and putting their tick to say, "I'll stay with the Union"?
Well, there's a young fella I know in Derry claims that he got a lift in a taxi, and he's a guy. He said he was a well-known farmer loyalist in the Derry area, or the Londonderry area, as the case may be. And the man says to him, it's all over. That the DUP, and I'll not use the term, have effed up so badly that the game's over. The United Ireland's on its way, and so on. And he says everybody in loyalism knows it. Now I don't know whether that's true, false, or in between, and so on. But he says Brexit has done more to bring about a United Ireland than the Provost did in 30 years.
Well, I think we've talked about this before, and we've said, like, to use a fashionable term, the arc of history is bending towards Irish unity.
Yes.
And maybe that's what makes these guys feel so kind of desperate, If in terms of numbers, in terms of voting and so on, it seems to be more and more nationalist, more and more Republican. You're left, they might say, well, we've no alternative but dig in our heels and threaten them with violence. That's what happened in 1912.
You see, the problem is, David Campbell is actually only saying what you're after saying. There is probably a threat of violence there, and it doesn't take a lot. Jude, let's put this clear to you, the arc of history and all that. Let's get this clear. If you look at it right now, every which way that loyalism and unionism is turning, they're getting slapped now. Even last week, Sammy Wilson had to go at King Charles. Now, did you have, in all your living days, have you ever heard a unionist having a go at the monarchy? The very core of being a unionist, they say they're not loyal to the government, they're loyal to the crown.
Yes, that's right. Paisley used to say that.
Yeah, well, here he had a first-class go at King Charles. They're having to go at the monarchy, a go at the crown. They say they've been betrayed by Boris Johnson. They say they're getting screwed by Rishi Sunak. The EU is out to get them. The SDLP is out to get them. The Alliance Party are shut and traitors. So where does that leave? Enemies everywhere.
Maybe it's like Alex Ferguson used to try to cultivate with Man United. Cultivate a siege mentality so that the players would fight like hell for one another. And maybe he's trying to get the same thing in terms of unionism. Tell them everybody hates us, don't they? And let's stick together and really do what needs to be done.
But Jude, Alex Ferguson had options. But unions,
That's true.
Eric Ten Hag would need to get the same determination shortly.
Yeah. But did you see that game? Did you 7-0?
Yeah, 7-0. Jesus, I've never seen worse.
Did you see it?
I did. Yeah.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's something else. Anyway, I still am a bit puzzled by this. If the LCC is representing illegal organizations, or it's not representing them, you say it's just conveying.
See, it might be the word. It could, rather than representing, the word might be reflecting.
Reflecting. Yes. That probably keeps them safe. But presume the UVF and the UDA are still illegal.
Yep, as far as I'm aware.
So what steps have the PSNI taken to squash these criminal bans?
Have you watched on Twitter? You're on it. I don't know if you're on Twitter or not. I'm not really on Twitter much, but I saw a couple of things. They're saying like these are criminals and all the rest of it. You know, the UVF and that they're drugs gangs and they're money lenders and they're loan sharks and all the rest of it. Why are these people being given a platform? So, Jude, it's a big issue, and it's an issue that I presume it's not going to go away. And Matthew O'Toole, by the way, I don't think there's a nationalist anywhere in Northern Ireland who doesn't think that the LCC as a cover sort of thing for a platform for allowing loyalist gangsters to threaten nationalists. I think, irrespective of Mr. Campbell is not committing any crime whatsoever, as far as I'm aware. But the point is, the LCC has been used as a platform to sort of say, "Oh, there will be violence."
Well, it does seem to be that way. Okay, well, let them stew in their own juice. I think the arc of history is still bending in the way I wanted to bend. Okay. What about this thing about the high seas protection? I didn't understand what you meant by that question, Pat. You said after 15 years of negotiation, a deal's been done to protect the high seas. Are there pirates at work, or what's wrong?
No, there was a thing signed yesterday. Jeez, you're the ecological guy here, not me. But there was after 15 years of negotiation. I think it was in New York. It was signed yesterday. And the high seas, Jude, we've all got coastal waters, but then the high seas, I think, are any seas. Now, Jude, I'm making this up, but I think this is right. It's 200. Once it's 200 miles off your coast.
I see what you mean. Yes.
Your high seas. The high seas are anywhere that there's no national governments out there, And right, look, let's be clear what's been happening. You remember there was nuclear waste being dumped. There's overfishing there, and now I don't understand enough about all this, but what I am aware of, the seas have a massive role to play in our climate control. They produce carbon. The rich sea life there, and so on. And I think about 60% of the seas in the world are high seas. No, not coastal.
Yeah.
Not.
So did you say there's been a deal done of some kind to sort of?
Yeah, but I would love to know how they're going to enforce it and how and so on. But anyway, I wrote down the chairperson was a woman called Rana Lee, and she said yesterday the ship has now reached the shore. In other words, the agreement. She was using a maritime
nautical
expression for the nautical expression for. So anyway, I wrote down it's essential to conserving 30% of the world's land and ocean by 2030, as agreed by world governments. The reason I wrote that down, Jude, I don't understand a whole lot about this, but it seems to be everybody's saying it's vitally important, and I would presume it is. If our seas are so badly polluted this time, and our fish stocks are declining at a massive rate, something should surely be done about it.
Well, it's not bad that they're at least making an effort that way, because the trick would be to have sanctions for those who would be prepared to break it. To have sanctions and make them stick, because otherwise.
Here's a question, Dr. Collins. Who enforces the sanctions?
Well, it should be United Nations, you would think, wouldn't you? But the United Nations doesn't seem to work that way. Okay, I find that boring, Pat. That's a boring one. Let's go on to an interesting one. Yeah. Violence in the GAA.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that's come up quite a bit, actually, in recent days. And I kind of feel strongly about it. You've mentioned how games had to be abandoned, how a guy said that he had packed in refereeing because, it was just too stressful. I think that it's time that the GAA did something about this. Because even in games where there isn't violence, a sub comes on, and what's the first thing that happens? The guy is marking, hits him a dunt, and then he hits him a dunt back. What sort of crap is that? What sort of crap? Like a pair of bloody bullocks in a field, bumping into each other. I mean, GAA football and GAA hurling are too marvellous, and camogie are too marvellous to be messing around with. And why can't the GAA come down on hard on these people? I also suspect that much of this violence, but you can correct me if I'm wrong now, is at the club level rather than the county level. And I suppose that goes back to inter-parish or adjacent parishes rivalry. That goes very deep,
Yeah,
isn't it? If you're from such and
absolutely.
such a place, you're not the same as us, we'll knock your head in. But I'd
Yeah,
still say, even though sports are made to excite our passions, I think they really should be very severe if people go beyond the law with regard to the rules and engage. That's absurd. It's ridiculous. What
yeah.
do you think? Do you
Yeah,
agree?
yeah, what do you call this? There's what I was referring to was a match in Dublin, which
Mhm.
is not exactly parish. On Sunday it was a junior hurling match, as far as I remember.
Yeah.
An umpire needed medical attention on the sideline after allegedly being assaulted. Right, that's the first thing. Two players from, I think, a team were red carded, and halfway through the second half, it was getting so bad the referee abandoned the whole proceedings. Now, Jude, this is not the first time it's happened at a GA match. Far from it. But Jude, no, let me cite a simple example. About 15, 20 years ago, there was a young fella I knew got a punch in the face that broke his jaw, that necessitated him wearing wire or something for about six weeks, and he had to take his food through a straw. And I remember saying, and I genuinely, this is 100% true. I remember saying to a guy one time, a big GA guy, I said, "This is stuggy." He says, "Look, it's a man's game." Now, wait a minute, Jude. A
Yeah.
man's game. You
Yeah.
punch
Yeah.
somebody on. Jude, one other thing. I was at a match, a wee local match years ago, somewhere up the county. And I just happened to be there. I don't even know why I was there. And I remember there's a big fella, I'd say in his 30s, and there was about a 17-year-old American in midfield. And the first thing the 31, he was a big fella, really strongly built, punched him on the side of the face, just to let him know he was there. And the ref did nothing about it. And I'm going, that's thuggery. And Jude,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not wild fond of the GA, because of things because there's almost a sort of, what would you say, a condoning of that sort of thing. And I am saying that is not the way to
Well,
sort of play
this
sport.
relationship between violence and sport, certainly I'd agree with every word you said about the GAA. But if you take something like ice hockey, or if you take boxing, violence is built
Yeah,
into those two. You will not see
yeah,
a game between the Boston Bruins and the Los Angeles
yeah,
Lakers or whatever that you won't have at some point the guys, thumping each other as distinct from going
yeah,
after the puck. So that
yeah,
clashes of opponents is built into it and it's seen as part of the excitement of the game. In boxing, now I'm not saying it happens during the thing because they observe certain rules, but before, whenever they meet at the weigh-in, they're always glaring at each other. Did you not see Katie
yeah.
Taylor doing that the other day? They say,
The sort of
who's going
the
to crack
stare.
first, and what'll I say that'll
Yeah,
put this? So there's this sort of hint that this is going to be a real grudge match, and I'll do everything to half kill you if I can. So there must be a public demand for that kind of thing, or an appetite for it, which is really a
yeah,
terrible pity. They also say
yeah.
that if you see games, soccer games, I remember seeing back in
Mm.
the 60s, I suppose 70s, a picture of George Best with just his togs on after a game, and his body was
Yeah,
covered in bruises. You know, he
yeah,
had been kicked
yeah.
and thumped and everything done to him, and that was seen as part of the game. And some people will say, "Oh, they're too sissyish now. The refs too hard." I think shouldn't be. Isn't half hard enough?
Yeah. Well, what do you call it? I remember the description of a guy who played for Derry City years ago. He was a good, hard, dirty player. He wasn't a good. He wasn't a good player. He was a good, hard, dirty player.
But
And like that.
I would applaud, at least I would applaud soccer for, well, I wonder does it apply, it doesn't apply in Gaelic, but soccer has made an effort to kick out racism and that kind of nastiness where they used to chant about Man
Absolutely.
United
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And that's good. That's good. They really should put their foot down because it's a pity to be smirched. Because sport, in my opinion, is a wonderful art form. It really is. And it's so
Yeah.
valuable
Yeah.
that some slobs should be allowed to sort of degrade it, seems wrong to me. And it's a pity our national game is going down
Absolutely.
the drain. So that's it, Pat.
Yes.
That's all I can't think of.
All the
I'm
best.
trying to think of something witty to say here, but I can't think. If I
Uh,
applied to the LCC, would they take me on, do you think?
You'd be a great spokesman for him.
Okay,
Spokesperson, sorry. We have
I'll
to
check it out. I'll check it
announce.
out. Okay, bye.
Okay, Jude.
All the best.
Good
Thanks
luck.
very much.